When you're a kid, your creative juices are flowing. But when you get older, they take that creativity away from you in school. They start focusing on, the pure academic. And I think we need to start harnessing that creativity. Don't let that go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Brave UX. I'm Brendan Jarvis, Managing Founder of The Space in Between, the behaviour-based UX research partner for enterprise leaders who need an independent perspective to align hearts and minds, and also the home of New Zealand's first and only world-class human-centred research and innovation lab. You can find out more about me and what we do at thespaceinbetween.co.nz. Here on Brave UX, though, it's my job to help you to keep on top of the latest thinking and important issues affecting the fields of UX research and design. I do that by unpacking the stories, learnings and expert advice of a diverse range of world-class leaders. My guest today is Suj Premachandran. Suj is the CEO of Digital Influx, an international industry-led and interactive EdTech platform that helps kids and teens to develop UX design skills and to think differently about problems, large and small. It's also a recruitment platform, but more on that later. Suj is also the Vice President of the recently established Digital Influx Foundation, a US-based non-profit that aims to make design education accessible for all children, regardless of their socio-economic background. Before founding Digital Influx, Suj worked in design recruitment as a senior talent partner for Revolut, one of the world's first global super apps, and also as a creative talent consultant for product and UX people at Salt in London. Suj is an advocate for design and UX education at Tech London Advocates, a network of more than 15,000 tech leaders, entrepreneurs and experts across the globe. He is also a member of the Design Leadership Forum. And now he's here with me for this conversation on Brave UX. Suj, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Brendan.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I really enjoyed looking at all the wonderful things you've been doing, Suj, with Digital Influx and learning a little bit about you. And one of the things that I did learn about you was that you have described yourself in the past as, and I'm going to quote you now, as a lazy person. And given what you've been up to recently, I found that quite hard to believe. What do you mean by lazy?
I try to find solutions really, really quickly. And sometimes the best way to do that is finding the right people to support you. Like, I'm an ideas person. I studied advertising at university. I studied creative advertising, right? And it was there that I learned firstly about portfolios, but how quickly an idea can prosper into something amazing. And I've kind of taken those ideas and realized my strengths and weaknesses. And to a certain degree, I am a little bit lazy, but I know how to combat that using my skill sets.
If you cast your mind back, when is the first moment or point in time that you remember taking this approach to trying to achieve something or solving a problem? Is this something that you've always done, or is this something that's come around recently?
It's just life. I don't think anyone's got like an ultimate strategy unless you're like watching too many YouTube videos about strategy. For me, it's just all kind of like come into place. But one of the things that's consistent in my life is understanding youth culture, right? I am from East London. I'm from a single parent household. I'm from a borough called Newham, which is, I'd say, one of the highest rates of youth unemployment in the capital. And what I've realized is if you're a kid from the 90s or the 80s or the 2000s, one common factor is that the education system is not meeting up with the speed of tech. We're still teaching kids the same things that we've been teaching them for the past 30 years, and we're not successfully bridging the gap between education and industry. And now knowing about AI and the speed that AI is kind of developing in, I feel if we don't start upskilling young people now, specifically around tech that's focused around empathy, which is at the core of UX, we're going to have a problem. So I can already see it in real time. And I'm just trying to make people aware of this and hopefully get some champions in the design community that believe in what we're doing.
And I want to come to what you're doing there with Digital Influx shortly, but I want to go back briefly, if we may, to East London and life in East London, because I've heard you speak about this before. And one of the things that you've said previously, and I'll quote you about this, is, and here's the quote, "I've noticed that there's a lot of wealth inequality, particularly in East London and inner suburbs within London." Now, I'm wondering, when was it that you first noticed this?
I'll tell you exactly when I figured this out. When I went to university, I was studying in the University of Arts, which is somewhat of a privileged university. It's like a lot of like rich arts students, right? And me walking around, right? Trying to learn what I could. And when I left uni, I got into recruitment. So I was always doing quite well. Even though I lived in this area, I never really like hung around here. I was always in central London and going out and going on holiday and things like that. But one year I quit my job. I quit my job to go traveling for a little while. And within that time, I spent the most amount of time in London, like in East London specifically, my home area, my home turf. And that's where I started noticing it, because I got to see like the other side, people that were a little bit more affluent, going to like the award shows and recruitment parties like that. I got to see the other side. But then when I was here, I would bump into people that I went to school with, and they are the exact same age as me, and they look a hell of a lot older. And I'm like, look, tough times have hit you, because you look around 55 and we're the same age. So that was one of the things I noticed. But then the second part of it was the level of crime, right? Specifically with kids. 2 months ago, right, on this very road that I live, right, 2 16-year-olds were stabbed to death with samurai swords, right? Like big ass, like swords of samurais. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like Mortal Kombat. Like this is the best way to describe it. But at the same time, you go 15 minutes down the road towards the Olympic Village, and it's like a completely different world. So there is a massive issue around wealth inequality, not just in East London, but in London as a whole. And that's driven mainly by the political class, right? There's no way around it. And I don't want to get too political around it, but essentially my personal belief about the political system, whether it's in the UK, US, or wherever, they both belong to separate parties, but they all go to the same parties, right? They go to the same functions, their kids go to the same schools. They know what's going on in this country, right? But something is not being addressed. And my personal belief is the empowerment of young people around the technology that they use every single day, right? They're born into this iPhone, Android world, right? The parents are giving them a phone as soon as they start crying too much. The children are already subconsciously understanding the functions of user experience. And it's about giving these young people an opportunity to kind of capitalize on that and empower their communities by understanding how to use this tech.
You mentioned your mother a little earlier.
Yep.
And being someone who comes from a sole parent household as well, also my mother, for example, raised me. I know, at least in my own experience, just how important that relationship has been in my life. I understand that your mum is also an educator. She's a teacher.
Yeah.
What is it that your mum teaches?
She teaches health and social care in a college based also in East London called Tower Hamlets College. She's been in education for the majority of her life, and she's like my goddamn hero, basically. She's helped me throughout the majority of my life, given me great advice, and education was literally nothing that she asked me to go into. It was like the complete opposite, but for some reason, it's kicked in, like the education gene has kicked in somewhere along the line, and I'm like, right, I'm going to be like you now.
Yeah, and because what you were saying about the inequality you've observed, and just outside your doorstep, you're seeing, or you're experiencing what it's like to live in a suburb where people are literally killing themselves with swords. And I understand knife crime is a big thing in London as well.
It's a goddamn war zone, right? Like every day something is going on, like every day. So yeah, it's a bit nuts.
I was curious about that link between where you found yourself growing up, the type of environment in terms of the household that you grew up in, and your mother's influence as a teacher. Is this some sort of coincidence that you're doing what you're trying to do with Digital Influx, like this education of children, primarily and teens, trying to give them a different skill set and a way of seeing the world?
I think I've had some advantages in my family dynamic and my friendship circle. and that influenced me to do these things. But there are there's an alternative version of me walking around this area that didn't have those opportunities and probably isn't doing these positive things. So there's definitely a want in me to try to help communities. The work that I've done is awesome, right? Like, we've managed to get to Texas, to Australia. Like, I've helped these kids all around the world, still struggling to get this into the education system here. So the UK is a little behind in terms of how they can change the system. But it's ironic, right? Because you put a British flag on any piece of education software or tech and you stick it out in Asia, people are like, oh my God, it's British, right?
It must be good.
It must be good, right? They created that language, but over here, like, if you look at the actual system itself, it's falling apart. And the other thing, with the rise of artificial intelligence, AI, ChatGPT, and all the other alternatives around it, I put myself in the mind of like a teenager. Would I use ChatGPT to cheat? Of course I would. I'd cheat every single day, right, at school. And so how does that affect the teachers? How does that affect the cognitive abilities of these young people? So I think we need to start changing education. That is the main goal, like bridging that gap between education and industry sooner. With AI, especially around development, your idea doesn't have to be just an idea anymore. You design something, in the next few years, there'll be technology available for you to develop it without the use of developers. So we're in exciting times.
We do. And I don't want to labor too long on the past, but I am curious to understand your thinking as to why the UK education system, why it's been such a brick wall for you to introduce what it is that you're trying to introduce. Yet you've had more success when it comes to the likes of Australia and Texas in particular in the United States. Why is this? What is holding the UK's education system back?
There's a subject in the UK called design technology, okay? It's best defined as woodshop in the US. So it's like building a radio or making a chair, right? Literal physical stuff. Is the fastest declining subject in England, right? Ofsted, which is like the main regulator, are trying to get rid of it, okay? There's a perfect spot for UX, which is essentially design technology, to go in. I have contacted schools. I've contacted the design technology board. And I remember having this conversation with them to say, look, this is design technology, this is what's in at the moment. And their response has always been, look, this is how we've done it. This is what the regulatory boards are like. There's too many hurdles, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And one part of me is like, right, I will just give the course away for free, right? But then the other part of me is like, I'm running a business. I've got a team. I've got bills. If I keep giving things away for free, what am I going to get out of this? So I'm basically building a case study around the work we've done in Oz and the work we've done in Texas. And then I want to present it to the UK government and see if we can go through those hurdles. The only other thing that we're doing at the moment in the UK is with something called the Mayor's Academy. So the Mayor of London is supporting underprivileged communities get back into work. So it might be like a 60-year-old retired bus driver as a persona here, right? No, get back into work. So we've created foundation level adults UX course, and we support older people get back into work in design. But just going back to your original question, it's the hierarchy here. There is a certain level of people that do not want to change, and I'm pretty sure there must be some kind of financial incentive there for them not to change, because it doesn't make sense, right? Even if you meet a graduate, I'll give you a prime example. There are students that I know that have got a master's in UX, right? Spent God knows how many thousands, especially if they're like an international student, have not got a clue, right? Will come out of uni and be at the same level as someone that's done like a 6-month boot camp. So whatever we're doing, we're basically forcing people to retrain forever, right? It doesn't make sense to me. So my solution is get this into the system earlier and get them to collaborate. Do you remember pen pals?
Yes.
When the pandemic was going on, I thought to myself, how the hell were people communicating before the internet? And I just stumbled on pen pals. So we get our students, our younger students, to create digital portfolios around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I have. As a result of researching for today, I did have a look at those. I believe there's 17 of them.
There's 17 goals. The UN, in their infinite wisdom, created these goals to solve, global problems. But as you can tell from watching the news, I don't think they're getting round to solving all of these, right? So my solution is to get our young students to create digital solutions around each of these problems and then create a pen pal system where they're able to collaborate between schools. So if you have a problem in New Zealand and some of the kids can't figure out the solution for this, it doesn't mean that another child sitting in the US or sitting in Nigeria or sitting in the UK can't figure out that solution. We can create businesses through these young people. They're already collaborating, playing Call of Duty or Minecraft, doing whatever, right? So why can't we get them to focus that energy on innovation?
How did this happen, Suj? How did you go from recruitment to talking to me here about helping children to collaborate across the world on solutions for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Like this seems to me at least like quite a leap that's gone on. How did it come to be?
So I was never meant to be a recruiter. I wasn't meant to be a creative. So I came out of university with a degree in creative advertising, and I was like, oh my God, I am going to go and make adverts. That's what I thought. And then when I came out of uni, I fell into the last recession, and I was literally like everyone else from my generation, like, what do we do? What do I end up getting into? And then that's when I fell into recruitment and realized that I could make quite a lot of money by just having conversations with people. That was literally it. And from there, I did quite well and traveled around for a bit. And then when I ended up in design recruitment specifically, a penny just dropped, right? Where I was just like, number one, I'm looking at portfolios again, like just as what I was doing in uni. And when I took my brain away from recruitment and started looking at design quite holistically, I was like, holy shit, like UX, these people, these designers, I don't even think they understand like the true potential of what this actually is. Like you can push this into bloody anything, right? Healthcare, finance, you can change the mentality of people. And if you really believe in the power of empathy, you can do some global change with this. That was the human side of me. The business side of me was like, hold on a minute. We're always looking for people, right? In recruitment forever, right? We're looking for people every week. These companies are always paying us to find good people. And this cycle is not going to change because we're not introducing this at a young enough age. We're taking too long. This pipeline of talent should be created at a younger age. But recruiters, the majority of them, don't even look at it from this angle. They're just like, oh, we'll just make our commission and keep sending CVs for the next 48 hours. And in my mind, I was like, right, I'm going to have conversations with everyone. So forget the designers. I'm going to start speaking to the heads of UX, product directors, product managers, and I'm going to figure out how to do a startup. And that was literally it. I just had a bunch of conversations, made a few notes, and started a company.
It's a much longer term perspective than the cadence that's inherent in the recruitment business, right? Like you have a job to fill, you need to find suitable candidates. Ideally, your candidate's the one that's chosen, you get paid. Where what you're doing here is you're trying to approach things, at least from my view, from a much longer term systemic point of view. What gives you, or what continues maybe to give you the confidence, given the obstacles that you've encountered both at home with the education system and no doubt abroad as well, what gives you the confidence that what you're trying to do will be successful?
Technology is changing. Technology is changing, and you've got a young child yourself, right? One of the things that I've not started to notice, that I've noticed from the past 5-6 years is that these kids, this technology, Zuckerberg's taken to court right now, right? Saying that bloody Facebook or Meta or something is destroying young kids' brains. Like you could see this in real time. This scrolling continuously is messing with their brains, right? they are slowly being desensitized to a lot of things. They're also having a drop in their social emotional intelligence and a general drop in empathy, right? There has to be a way to empower this empathetic side of it. The other side of it is a little bit more spiritual, which is essentially what I touched base with you earlier on when we started the conversation. I don't think design or UX is new. I think it's very old and we've just rebranded it. So you had Don Norman on a little while back and I was like, it's Don. I always use this example when I do talks around the door, going up to the door. I also think that's a really poor example of empathy because me and you going up to a door, right, depending on what the sign is, we'll still just pull that handle to go through or push the handle to go through. But if you're blind or you're in a wheelchair or you're not human, you're a giraffe, you have to redesign the entire experience of that door. So for me, going through this journey of understanding design, I've linked it around Eastern philosophies of design. So if you look at China, if you look at something like feng shui, right, moving things around to control the energy in a room, that is a user experience, right? And to a certain degree, you're like, yeah, feng shui is a little bit arty-farty. But if you go to Hong Kong, they redesigned their entire city around these feng shui principles, right? This has been something that's been going on for thousands of years. If you dig deeper and you look at India, India had a system of education called the Vedic education system, right? It had its own science, it had its own maths, it had everything that you can think of, right? And at the crux of it, again, was empathy. It was very closely linked to yoga, meditation, breath work, and martial arts. It's about understanding yourself, understanding your opponent, understanding your environment, understanding animals. But again, it's linked to this empathy piece. So what I'm doing is, I guess, following up from my ancestors. This is what they were doing. And I'm digitalizing that process. And as we're going into this age of where we're sticking headsets on our faces and walking the street and having relationships with artificial intelligence, I think it's very important that we realize that we're human, right? That we can start integrating different practices around design thinking and UX. That's a mission for me.
You've talked about a few things there about the decline of sort of social, emotional health of children. You've pointed to a general decline of empathy there. You've talked about how you're trying to bring through some, I suppose, more Eastern philosophy, or at least philosophy of education, into how you're delivering that. I'm wondering, do you see any irony at all that what Digital Influx is doing is providing education for the design of largely screen-based experiences, where it's the current design of those screen-based experiences that some may point to and say these are the source of some of the decline that we've seen in children's emotional and social well-being?
Yeah, 100%. But I have to work with the system. And unfortunately, there are these rules that I have to stick by. But the system that we're teaching, the curriculum that we're teaching these young people, is getting them away from these screens. Like, we teach breath work and yoga and meditation as part of the design thinking process, right? Like, all of this stuff from these ancient wisdoms are all essentially linked around mental health. Yoga, meditation, and breath work and martial arts isn't all just to be stretchy, right? It is to clear your mind, to have clarity of thought. So I think the way we're teaching UX, to build like an app for fintech or something is great. But what we really need to be doing is reprogramming the way we think around global problems.
I think I see where maybe some of the reluctance for the UK system to adopt this way of thinking might be coming from, at least from my outsider's perspective, the English, or at least primarily the English. Of course, the UK's got the Welsh, the Northern Irish and the Scottish as well, so their cultures are slightly different. But the English embody this sort of stiff upper lip mentality. I can't imagine that, teaching breathing exercises and yoga, things like this may seem very foreign to educators that have been brought up and continue to perpetuate that older or perhaps more traditional English way of educating.
I think things are changing, but things aren't changing quick enough. And again, it comes to the speed of technology. Like, it's not matching up to the speed of education. And I think when we get to a point where, shit really hits the fan, that's when people will decide that things need to change. The current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, his solution to this problem was just to get kids to do more maths. Right. So it was like breaking news. Rishi Sunak has said kids must study maths for another 3 years. And I was like, those poor dyslexic kids, they're not going to be happy about this at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't great at maths. So, yeah, there's definitely some barriers around it.
You've pointed to previously, I think it was South Korea and some other potential other places in Asia in particular that have taken a different approach to educating children. Perhaps there's debate here to be had about the merits of the approach as a whole, but I understand that one of the things in particular in South Korea that they're doing is teaching children as young as 5 robotics, coding, and design thinking. Has this been part of the influence for you in designing Digital Influx? What role have other education systems from non-Western or non-UK based systems played in the development of your curriculum?
This is linking back to recruitment, really, right? Because if you're teaching kids robotics and coding at the age of 5, right, and they continue this throughout their curriculum until they get to around 18, the level of talent in that part of the world is going to be growing astronomically, right? Where are we going to be hiring our people from, right? If we're not generating this talent at home, we are basically going to be outsourcing everything. And that, from an economic standpoint, is a bit of a risk, right? Like, there's no way around this. Like, I don't understand, like, how people in these leadership roles are not figuring this out. Like, we are in for a rude awakening, specifically countries in the West. I think we are like stuck in our ways and not really taking into account what's happening in all these other countries like Korea, even in the UAE, right? Like, they're massively focusing on digitalized education. So again, as I said, it links back into recruitment. Like, where are these people going to get jobs? Who are the people that are going to be earning the most amount of money? The youth unemployment in this specific borough where I'm at is super high. So what's that going to be like in the next 30 years? So there's a lot of factors behind that.
Why do you suspect that Rishi Sunak was pointing at maths in particular, doing extra maths?
He's got a background in finance. He's probably has his own thought process behind this because he was good at maths that everyone else should be. I don't personally know. But what I do know is that, as I said to you earlier, AI is here, right? This ChatGPT algorithm world is part of everyone's life now, right? We don't need to memorize. Well, I'll go back to this Vedic education in India. When the British, the people with this accent, showed up, they abolished that education system, right? India had one of the highest literacy rates in the entire world. They got there and basically destroyed the education system and changed it into the Industrial Revolution model of education. So memorizing answers. So essentially, it's training for you to go work in a factory. Who remembers the best? And at that point in time, that was great. But now I don't need to remember all these answers because I've got something on my phone that will bring up these answers straight away. So, yeah, hindsight, I've got no idea what Rishi Sunak's plan is. I don't know what any of these political leaders are doing for the planet, really. I'm not like some eco warrior here, but I watch the news and I'm like, right, lot of war, lot of destruction. They're cutting down the rainforest. They're basically doing everything that's negative. Like, I can't see any solution around positive change in this world without changing the mindset of kids.
Well, let's talk a little bit about changing that mindset, because I understand that as part of one of the courses that you offer for children, you ask them to describe how they feel when playing on a swing set.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a bit about that.
It's going back to the door example of Don Norman, right? So one of the examples that we ask children to look at is an example around usability. So one of the examples is we ask children how they feel when they go to a park and they play on a swing set. We give them multiple choice answers and they will click happy or excited or sad, whatever they like. The following image is a picture of a child in a wheelchair and another child next to them. We asked the students, how do you feel, or how would your friend in a wheelchair feel if you both went to a park and got up to a swing set and you could use the swing, but they're unable to use the swing? And give them multiple choice answers again, and they would go for, sad or upset. This is building that emotional connection around we're all human. So the next slide would say to the students, redesign a swing just on paper for a wheelchair user. And they're kids, right? So they'll draw all these crazy ideas, and then you then show them real life examples of swings that have been adapted for wheelchair users. And that's to demonstrate that UX isn't just for the digital world, it's for the physical world as well. And that there's no design that's perfect. There's always room for improvement based around the empathy that you have for a user.
What surprised you about delivering this to children in terms of the response that you've seen from them?
Curiosity, creativity are two things, right? So if you try out one of our lessons, our demo lesson, there's a video game built within the course, and it's about a library, right? The first question on the game is there's a lady with a cane that's stuck behind a revolving door, and the question is, why is this lady stuck behind this revolving door? She's an older person, doors are spinning too quickly. How would you solve this problem? It would be putting another door in, right? Like an automated door rather than a revolving door. And once the kids played this game through the library, a lot of them started analyzing stores. So when they started going into a store, they started looking about the usability of the doors, right? And I know that's not a major thing, right? But it is a major thing because that has sparked some kind of curiosity and creativity within their brains, like immediately from playing one game. So it works. The other things that we started looking at was how these portfolios are kind of picked up by different communities. So if we look at animal welfare in the UK, that might be around like, dog or a cat or something, right? But if you do it somewhere else, that might be a completely different ball game, right? It might be looking at like wild animals. So there's different ways that we can kind of interpret it depending on the socio-economic situation of the school or this child. So it's quite interesting to see what everyone's working on, how they think.
Yeah, so this is really about how children are thinking. I was thinking as you were telling that story, I'm not an educator and I'm also not an academic, so potentially similar to you in terms of the level of higher education that we've had. It's on par, right? So I'm probably a little off base here in what I'm about to say, but it seems like one of the other outcomes that are being delivered through the courses that you're providing is the emergence of an ethical foundation from which children can start to think about the immediate design problem that's in front of them, but also, touching on what you were saying earlier about empathy, about considering the people and community around them and what their experiences are like. There's not, as to my knowledge, and it's been a while since I've been in the education system where we're the same age, it's not to my knowledge taught in any other subject. I can't think of another subject that I took or that I've heard of children take, and I now have a school-age child, a 5.5-year-old, where they're actually learning that type of thing.
There are lessons specifically focused around design thinking. So, empathy is part of the design thinking framework, so that is there. Social emotional learning can be pushed through with other classes. So you can look at things like drama as an example, or sociology. You can kind of embed it there. But there's nothing that kind of like bridges that gap, like connecting all the dots between the education, the social emotional intelligence, and also industry.
Yes, that's it, right? Because it's more than theory. It's showing children that they can have an immediate impact on the world around them. That's the hands-on part of design. There's the thinking part that, we've talked about and clearly has become very popular around the world. But then there's the actual craft application of the design, which flows from that.
Yeah, it's all changing, essentially. One of the things that I'm looking at right now is portfolios. So my background in recruitment, I was very lucky, right? I got to see portfolios from all over the world, like literally all over the world. And it was looking at portfolios from like junior level all the way up to design directors in the US, the UK, Asia. And what's happening now in the industry is pure utter boredom, right? People are bored of seeing the same types of portfolios all the goddamn time, right? Design thinking process. These are my personas. This is that. This is this. It's not really standing out anymore. And what we're looking at is how can we be more creative around the creation of our portfolios. The TikTok generation, they're a perfect example of this. What we're doing now is creating a new style of portfolio, which is fully immersed around the student interactivity within the portfolio. How can they make it more visual? How can they make it more audio led? Like, how can we take the minds around creativity from that age group and push it into a new generation of portfolios? We're also looking at how the Apple headset, you've seen Iron Man.
Yes.
There's scenes in Iron Man and also the Avengers where Iron Man is looking at like this augmented reality office, right? He can go into the screen and move things around and go into it, right? And I always thought to myself, that's the way you should be looking at a portfolio, not bloody looking at it as a bloody PDF. Like, you should be physically able to go into a portfolio and press play on a persona. You should be able to hear those people talking to you. And that's what we're looking at now. So with the students that we're working with, we're looking at creating a new way of viewing portfolios, a new way of solving problems, not the traditional mindset that we have now.
So given that pace of change, and given, you mentioned Call of Duty earlier, right? So given the fact that there's so much digital candy, I suppose, around for children to get hooked on, it doesn't often leave education as an attractive way of spending their spare time. What has that meant for the design that you've had to bring to bear on your courses?
Money, right? So I don't know if you know this, all these kids, they know about money, right? They know that things cost money. They know that they want to be financially successful. They know they want to buy things, right? And what I'm trying to be very transparent about to young people is how much you can earn within the design field in this current moment in time, but also the fact that they can create their own businesses. They can be entrepreneurial, that they don't have to go to university if they don't want to go to university, that you can create an idea from your mind and monetize it if you really wanted to, right? And some people are like, no, why are you teaching kids about bloody money? That's not worth it. In my mind, I'm like, they are watching YouTube every day. All of them. Every single one of them is watching YouTube, right? They know that these people like Mr. Beast having loads of fun every day is monetizing his content and making money out of it. So what I'm looking at is not, turning kids into some greedy, like money hungry, like Wolf on Wall Street types here, but I need them to start creating these solutions, right? One part of this is, right, you can monetize some of these solutions, but the other part of it is, I think the planet is dying, right? I don't know if people are like really addressing this, but I think the planet is dying. We're in a recession, and I'm fairly sure World War III is happening right now. We're just not addressing it as World War III. We need some goddamn solutions here. Like, we can't have these people that are running the world carrying on with this mindset. We need to start focusing around innovation and empathy. Like, this is, in my mind, there's no way around this, right? Otherwise, we're going to be in for a rude awakening.
This is an potentially provocative question.
Mm-hmm.
So if the planet is dying and we're seeing all these things play out, with conflict in the Middle East, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, climate change, the list kind of is getting a bit longer, especially in recent years. We've been through a pandemic and so on and so on. Why focus on children as young as 5 and not on adults who are in the immediate position to make decisions that could impact the present?
We do both. So we teach adults and we teach children, but essentially that seed of creativity, that seed of innovation has to be planted younger. Like, when you're in school, when you're a kid, right, your creative juices are flowing. I remember I dismantle things, like I just dismantle like a remote control car, like, and then I plug in like a calculator or something into it, like take the wires out, And I'll be like, oh my God, I've created a bloody time machine, right? I used to think things like that. And, it's crazy, right? But when you get older, they take that creativity away from you in school. They start focusing on, the pure academics. And I think we need to start harnessing that creativity. Don't let that go. That's what I'm looking at. But from what you said around the adults, we do that as well. But what I notice from teaching adults and teaching kids is like, you've got a completely blank canvas with these kids, completely blank, right? When they get to, adulthood, they've got assumptions and thoughts that have been kind of created around their social situations, right? And with children, they're fairly innocent. There's no racism or sexism or worried about how much your trainers cost when you're like 9 years old, right? They are a complete blank canvas. And if we can focus that empathetic education around them, they could potentially change the world.
That's a very lofty, and I'm getting slightly inspired here, thought. It's a thought that perhaps rubs up against the status quo a little bit, hence some of the difficulties you've had when trying to get the program into your home education system. What is it about trying to take on such a well-established, well-entrenched system that you believe is worth it? Clearly you've talked about the planet being at stake here, but this is a vision that seems to me will be very difficult to achieve. Why are you dedicating so much energy to it?
You say this, right? But it's approved in the state of Texas, right? We've got it in the education system over there. We're in schools over there. And that was not in my mind. Like, if you asked me like 5 years ago, you want to set up a business in Texas, I'll be like, okay. Like, that would be my immediate reaction. But they're doing it. It's happening over there. And like,
so what did they see? What did you help them to see that others have not?
I think it might have been my accent somewhere along the line.
The Union Jack.
Yeah, that could have been my accent. I think Idris Elba opened some doors for us. So I don't know. But we worked with some great educators out there. They introduced us to people within the Texas Education Agency, and they valued it. Texas is not what I would have perceived it as, like, from watching TV growing up and stuff, right? When I actually started meeting people from Texas, it's super cool. There's a lot of great tech companies that are moving into Texas as well, right? They've also got great rules on tax, on corporation tax. So a lot of these big companies are moving over there. And I think within Texas itself, they want to upskill their community so they can work for these companies as well, right? And geographically, Texas is bigger than England, bloody huge, right? So I've managed to do it over there. So for me, it's not a lofty dream. I've managed to get this done, and we've got no funding, right? Absolutely nothing. Still managed to do it, right? We're in Australia right now, in New South Wales. We're doing the same process, getting this approved in New South Wales. And I'm like, I can do this halfway across the world with my laptop and a few colleagues, and I still can't like penetrate the system here. It's like absolutely heartbreaking, but I can't give up.
I was going to ask you about that too. Those two things you've just told me. One, how does it feel not to be able to do what you had intended to do in East London, for example, with those kids, the kind of kids that you were one of once, not that long ago? And secondly, whether or not you'd given up on attempting that. And clearly the answer is no, you haven't, which is really encouraging to hear. I was curious to know a little bit more about your experience setting things up in the US. I understand part of the reason why you've established the foundation is to enable more organizations to work with you. What can you tell me about the foundation, and in particular, if people are listening who are in the United States that are in a position to or are curious to engage with Digital Influx and understand how they might be able to get on board with supporting it? What do they need to know?
Essentially, schools don't have money, right? The reason why a lot of EdTech companies fail is that they target the schools. The schools get around bloody 20,000 emails a week from random companies saying, do you want to buy my product? They haven't got the time, they haven't got the resources, and it's difficult for them as a whole. So what we've done is eliminate the cost. So companies such as one of our largest sponsors, PepsiCo, worked with us, and we worked through corporate social responsibility. we know that companies, whether in the US or internationally, have got money set aside for social good, whether that's through CSR or ESG. There is pots of money there to support people. And what we do is we partner with companies to support the schools. So if there are anyone listening right now that wants to help create the new generation of innovators within design, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or my email, which I can provide later, and we can have a conversation about how we can support schools. At the same time, because we are bridging this gap, we are creating a full curriculum. So right now, our courses are aimed at a certain age group, but we want to get this done all the way up to 18 to 19. So I don't know, well, I know for a fact this has never been done before, right? Like a full curriculum, like starting from 10 years old up to 18, completely focused on the study of design, starting with UX, but also integrating other elements, looking at product design, service design, game design. We just want to focus completely on design. And then this leads to the new pipeline of talent for the companies as well. So their sponsorship is not only supporting, underprivileged schools, it's also creating the new pipeline of candidates that they're looking for, that they're desperately looking for.
And if there's one thing that has been a constant in the design conversation as long as I've been participating in it, which is most actively over the last 3 to 4 years, it's been the will, the desire, but perhaps not the reality of making the field of design more inclusive. And I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, in particular, the part that speaks to your role and the foundation, you've said, and I'll just quote you here, you've said, "We believe that design education should be accessible to all children, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status. We understand that the future lies in the hands of today's youth, and by equipping them with the tools and knowledge of user experience design, we can help to shape a more inclusive and innovative world." So it seemed to me that you also have noticed, or there's something in here in what you're trying to do that's recognized that UX or design, more broadly speaking here, the education and therefore the field of design is out of reach for some people.
People don't even know it exists. Some people don't even know what it is. Even now, you go to a bar and say you're a UX designer, they'll be like, what? What's an UX? Right? Like,
Yeah.
they don't know what it is. If you look at design from a recruiter perspective, design is more inclusive than a lot of other sectors within tech. There's a lot more female leadership. There's a lot more people from ethnic backgrounds, but I still think there's a long way to go. A lot of people don't know what UX is, and in particular, kids don't know what UX is. So what we're doing is embedding this into the minds of young people to make them aware that this is a career option. This is a path for you to understand the technology that you're using every day. And it's also a path to empower you to become an innovator, a business leader. Like, you don't have to wait till you get to university before you start making decisions about your life. You can start creating technology to impact the planet today.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kevin Bethune. He's been a guest on the podcast before. He's ex-Nike, and he's got a wonderful, both in terms of physical product design and digital experience design. He's a real leader. He runs a practice called Dreams, Design and Life. And he and I were talking, him being a Black American, talking about the glaring gap that exists in particular for Black Americans in design, where the latest AIGA census, I believe, put it at 3% of the designers that responded were Black, and the general population in America of Black people is around 12.5 to 13%. And I was curious, in particular, with your will to make design more inclusive, and of course having a beachhead in America, in Texas, what emphasis, if any, are you placing on bringing more people of color in particular into the field?
I mean, I am a person of color, unless you're like, has he got a tan? No. Right, like, this has been something in the forefront of my brain for a very long time, right? Working in recruitment, I got to see this like firsthand. When you go into the leadership circles of a lot of these tech companies, right, it's very glaringly obvious, right, that there's not a lot of space for diversity when you get to the higher ranks. Now, that's obvious. Like, there's no way around this. And I personally feel that, again, like I've got to go back to the same thing, which is you have to kind of change the mindsets of young people, because the older generation isn't really going to change anytime soon. But I think what design does give you the chance to do is innovate yourself, right? Like, you can be a business leader, you can create an app, you can create a business, you can create a new process for someone. Like, you don't always have to climb that corporate ladder. You don't want to. Like, people are making money through all different ways all the time, every day. And I think UX is just a switch that can change that mindset. But with regard to diversity in particular, there's the reality of the situation that we're in, right? Like, there's no way around it. It's just about giving more transparency about what's out there. Like, what is UX? How can this impact your life? What is data science? Like, we should be giving access to this information to more people. And when you're giving it to kids, like, this kind of relays to the parents as well, right? The parents, the families, like, this is how these things kind of grow and create like this murmur, like this ripple effect. Once it goes through the kids, it will pass on to other people, because doing it the other way around seems like it's not working quick enough.
While we're on the subject, I have to ask you, is it true that somewhere between 3 and 5% of global venture capital goes to people of colour and women?
I'm glad you brought that up. That is 100% true. So when I started this journey, I knew this statistic, and me being a little bit arrogant, I was like, screw that. That doesn't apply to me. So when I started Digital Influx, I knew that going and essentially begging for money is probably not going to go anywhere, right? So I used Digital Influx as an incubator for the business. So I created a recruitment business for 1 year. So Digital Influx started as a UX recruitment business. We created 100 grand in a year, right? Just me and one of my colleagues, right? And we used that money to essentially move into the EdTech space. So we created our own money to do it. But the reality is, this story that I've given you, right? Setting up in Texas, partnerships with PepsiCo, growing into Australia, creating a recruitment platform, that all of these things should correlate to at least a couple of angel investors or something coming up to us and saying like, hey, you guys are doing something cool, let's do it. And, you hear all this stuff about diversity and inclusion and everything else, but the reality is, I don't think they're coming to help, right? And it's 100% something to do with race. Like, I don't want to pull out the race card because I don't think it's a valid thing to do, but these stats don't lie. 3 to 5% is crazy, right? Like, it's absolutely nuts. And I remember putting out this LinkedIn status saying, why is it that, the VC world is not embracing like these communities, right? What is it? And I remember a VC saying, yes, we've still got more work to do. And I thought to myself, that's great, right? So that's like something that I think a lot of startups are aware of. And, we're actively still looking for funding. I'll give you a personal story for me, right? The business was going really a couple of years. Like, we did the recruitment stuff, pandemic happened, we did a lot of user research, figured out this kids course. 2022, we launched the kids course, got a partnership with Pepsi, got corporate sponsorship here. And then as soon as 2023 hit, I had some really bad news. My mum got diagnosed with cancer. Once that happened, I realized something, that emails don't matter, right? None of this shit matters. Got to concentrate on my mum. So I took 6 months essentially to kind of like stay with her and like sort out like my mental health essentially, because I'm like, you can't try to manage a business and like look after people you love. Like, it's difficult to do. And once I did that, I was like, right, I've got to restart all over again, right? So now we are doing this adult UX boot camp. I've had to restart the recruitment business just to try to make up the money that I've done to kind of support my family. And it's like, this journey's beginning all over again. And I'm like, oh my God, like, someone just give me a goddamn break, right? Because I'm like, I was sitting here thinking this the other day. I was like, I've thrown away this recruitment life, right, where I was earning really good money, right, having a hell of a good time all the time. And I've gone through this like journey of struggles because I believe so passionately about the future of these kids. Like, I'm like, there's absolutely no way that this isn't a solution or part of a solution, but trying to find people that believe in this has been near enough impossible. And the only people that really understand this is the goddamn designers. The designers know what I'm saying is true, right? They all know it, from looking at the Eastern philosophy piece to bridging the gap between education and industry, looking at social emotional learning. They know, right? All of them, from the heads of UX all the way down to like the bloody junior designers. They know what I'm saying is true, but no one's rallying around this cause. So I guess it's just me against the world, I guess, like Tupac Shakur.
It sounds like that the trials, not to, downplay them, they've been significant, particularly with your mum. I was thinking about how I would feel if I had the same news about mine. It sounds like even though you haven't managed to secure funding, or you've been through these ups and some big downs, that it's tightened your resolve, it's firmed it up rather than it's unraveled it.
I'm from this community in Kerala called the Panickers, and they are like the originators of martial arts. So martial arts comes from Kerala, right? And it's spread out to like Southeast Asia and China and things like that. Weapons-based combats. So like my ancestors were like going to war, right? Like traveling all over the world, doing all this stuff. When the British invaded India, the longest conflict was in Kerala. It was like a 10, 12-year war, right, against the British, because they believed in their values and their culture. And me sitting here with all these luxuries, right, I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going to give up when my ancestors had to go through like living on a ship for like 6 months to get off and go fight someone with a sword. I'm like, nah, definitely a little bit better than this. So I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, but I believe in that. I'm like, look, we're all coming back round on this earth. Like we're the result of someone that's gone through a struggle to kind of get us here. So even knowing that my mum's going through a hard time, I know that what I'm doing is inspiring someone. Like, even if this business was to fail, right, as long as I'm able to impact someone, if I'm able to impact some child, to spark something in their brain to create some kind of positive change on the planet, then my work here is done.
Suj, I think that is a wonderful place for us to leave this conversation. I've really appreciated you going and sharing so much personal insight into what it's been like for you to set up and run Digital Influx. And I want to thank you for so generously sharing your stories and insights with me today.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to me. Appreciate it.
Oh, mate, been my pleasure. My pleasure. So if people want to connect with you, inspired by what they've heard, and they would like to know more about Digital Influx, perhaps either to participate or to contribute in some way to your mission, what's the best way for them to do that?
Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am literally the only Suj Premachandran on LinkedIn, so you can reach out to me there. If you want to see a little bit more about the work that we're doing, please visit digitalinflux.com. You will see links to our YouTube page on there as well, where you can see a few of the events that we've done and a few cool videos around some of the webinars that we've done as well.
Great. Thanks, Suj. And to everyone who's tuned in, it's been wonderful having you with us as well. Everything that we've covered will be in the show notes. They'll be chaptered on YouTube in particular, so you can jump around to the parts of the conversation that you want to hear again. You'll also be able to find Suj and Digital Influx, all the places that he's mentioned, and perhaps a few others will be in the show notes too. If you've enjoyed the show and you want to hear more great conversations like this with world-class leaders in UX research, product management, and design, don't forget to leave a review on the podcast. Subscribe as well, so it turns up every 2 weeks, and tell perhaps just one other person who you feel would get value from these conversations at depth. If you want to reach out to me, you can find a link to my LinkedIn profile on the show notes, or just search for Brendan Jarvis. You'll find me there. Or you can head on over to my website, which is thespaceinbetween.co.nz. That's thespaceinbetween.co.nz. And until next time, keep being brave.